June is Pride Month, which means that just about everyone you know who is out and falls anywhere under the LGBT umbrella is going to be sharing their coming out story. Although coming out stories are very important and very helpful in the LGBT community, I decided to take a slightly different route with my video. I want to address the parents of people who either are out or parents who suspect their child might fall under that LGBT category. People tend to forget that there is a slight disconnect between LGBT children and straight cis parents, because although we can be understanding of one another, there's no way for us to truly, fully understand one another because we're different. I don't know what it's like to be straight, and a cis-het parent won't know what it's like to be gay or trans or bi or any of that stuff. And just quick disclaimer, I will be saying LGBT instead of the whole long thing as an umbrella term so that this video doesn't get longer than it needs to be. And if I say cis-het, it's not meant as an insult. It simply means someone who is non-trans and is straight. I'd like to go through a list of 10 different points that I've thought up today in no particular order, just whatever order they came into my head, of thoughts that might go through a parent's mind when their child comes out, and you as the parent, how to react to those thoughts. Because coming out is very difficult and very scary and very emotional for everyone involved. It's not just a lot for us as the child coming out, it's a lot for you to take in too, especially if you had no idea that it was coming. So hopefully my little list here will help you feel better about the whole thing. And that brings me to my first point. If you, the parent, had no idea, didn't see it coming for miles and miles that your child is LGBT, and they sit down and they come out to you, it will definitely come as a huge shock. And being that you're in shock, you might go silent, because that's just a human response. That's what happens to us. Something surprises us, we're not sure what to do about it, so we get quiet. Important thing to remember in this situation is, even though you might be totally bricked up in a wall and you might have no idea what to do, try your hardest to break that silence, because the longer you're silent, the more likely your child will be to believe that you're disappointed in them or angry with them. So try to break the silence. Ask them some questions like, do you have a partner? How did you come to realize that you're whatever they are? Just little generic basic questions like that. It will help your child feel safer, because hearing you just asking questions instead of staying silent will help them understand that everything is okay. Nothing terrible is about to happen. And asking generic questions about them being LGBT will help them understand that you accept them. And that rolls into another point. No matter what's going through your mind, what emotions you're feeling, which all emotions are perfectly valid on either end of coming out, do your very, very best to have some forethought before speaking to your child, because it's very easy for you feeling angry, scared, nervous, confused, any negative emotions, to accidentally say something that will lead your child to believe you're disappointed in them. And trust me, one of the most hurtful things you can do when your child comes out to you is lead them to believe that you're disappointed in them, whether it's intentional or not, because it takes so much courage to actually say something like this to anyone, especially a parent. So do your best to think before you speak, and make sure everything you say to your child or everything you ask them is worded in a way that doesn't come off confrontational. If you suspected that your child might be LGBT in the past, or if you've even asked them outright before and they denied it, please don't take it personally when they do come out and you're like, well, wait a minute, I asked you before and you said no, like 3 months ago. What's changed? Nothing has changed. Your child just wasn't ready. I know that it's difficult to understand as someone who is not LGBT, but you can't expect anyone in your life to come out before they're ready. If someone feels forced out of the closet and like they have no choice but to come out before they're ready, a lot can go very, very wrong. Don't think that because you suspected that your child was LGBT and they didn't tell you until now, or that, they waited 20 years to come out, or that when you asked them before if they were gay or bi or whatever and they said no, don't think that they were hiding from you or that they were trying to lie to you because of anything personal. It was nothing personal, I promise you, on behalf of your child. Nothing personal at all. They just weren't ready yet. Everyone has to come out in their own way and in their own time. You have to feel 100% ready to handle any reaction that may come your way, and if you're mentally not prepared for that, it's the wrong time to be coming out. Likewise, you have to make sure that you know what method of coming out will suit you best in order to comfortably come out to your parents. Which brings me now into another point. Don't be offended by the way your child comes out to you. Everyone is different, and not everyone can just sit down on the couch and go, "Dad, I'm gay," and just take whatever is thrown at them, figuratively and metaphorically. If your child is artistic and not terribly vocal, like they talk to you and everything, but they are a little more on the shy or introverted side, it might be easier for them to come out to you by painting a picture of, an LGBT couple or something, showing it to you and saying, "What do you think of this?" to kind of gauge your response first. And then if you're like, "Oh, that's kind of pretty" or something, then rolling that into, "Well, how would you feel about me being that way?" They might write it into a novel or a short story and do the same thing. They might write you a letter. They might text you and say, "Please only respond in text. I really am not comfortable with discussing this on the phone or in person yet." You have to kind of put pride aside in these situations. Again, not take it personally. It's just the only way your child can comfortably come out at this point in time. And trust me, over time, the more you discuss them being LGBT and the more they realize that nothing is changing with your relationship with them, the more likely they'll be to openly discuss it and not hide behind their phone, their computer, a letter, things like that. So just understand that they're doing the best that they can in that situation, and they're not trying to, hurt your feelings by coming out the way that they did. This is going to be a big one, and I'm sure there will be plenty of people who try to argue with me, but just bear with me anyway. We understand there is a generational difference. We understand that in your generation, our parents' generation, it's very likely that when you were growing up, all you heard of were straight, gay, and maybe bi, depending on how open people were around you, and that gay and bi were probably heavily stereotyped and depicted in a very negative light. Please understand that in this day and age, there is a multitude of gender and orientation identities that are all extremely valid, and you need to be open to discussing this with your child. If your child says, "I am a gender fluid pansexual," and you look at them like they were speaking Chinese, ask them questions and be open to their response, because they understand their identity better than you do. That's something you have to keep in mind with this. I know it's confusing. I know it's probably frustrating because you're like, "Well, it was easier when it was just the gays." But that's just not the way the world works anymore. And it's actually a good thing that more people are feeling safe enough to share the fact that they don't just fit into one tiny box anymore. So don't argue with them, even if you think it sounds stupid, even if it makes no sense to you. Don't argue with them about their identity, even if you think that it doesn't exist. Just nod and agree, and don't say anything. If you have nothing nice to say nothing at all, just like you always taught us when we were growing up. Because think of how it would feel if it was you in their position and someone was insisting that you're something other than you are. That because you're a dad who wore a pink shirt one day, maybe it was like your kid's school colors or something, everyone is now insisting that you're trans. Or you're a mother and everyone's insisting that you're gay because you said Anne Hathaway looked very beautiful in a movie. It would drive you up the wall. It would make you so crazy. You'd get pissed off. You'd get depressed because everyone around you would be arguing with you about something that you know is untrue about yourself. So don't put your child in that position, because it's extremely difficult, and that's where you're going to end up breaking a lot of trust ties with your kid. Now I'd like to discuss a couple of thoughts that might go through your mind either while your child is coming out to you or after they've come out to you. One of them is, but what will our more conservative relatives think? I know that that's a very scary possibility to a lot of people, sitting around the table at Christmas and knowing that, great Auntie Selma is going to ask your LGBT child, "So Billy, do you have a girlfriend yet?" I know the idea of this inevitability is absolutely terrifying because you think, what do we say? Here's the thing. There's two ways to look at this. One, as the parent, it might not be anything you ever really have to worry about depending on your kid. Your kid might be perfectly content to just take it all and put it on their shoulders and not have you worry about it. And if they want you to be a part of it, sit down and discuss this with them. Don't wait until it's too late and Auntie Selma's already asked the question. You know you're going to her house at Christmas, so on November 1st, sit your child down and say, "Billy, I'm kind of worried about what your older, more conservative relatives are going to think about you having a boyfriend. How do you want to address this when it comes up?" And together you can kind of brainstorm ideas and bounce ideas off of each other until you come to a conclusion that makes sense. One of the easy ways to get through that is the child can do what I do. I've got plenty of relatives who pull that all the time. "Hey, do you have a boyfriend yet?" And my response is always the same. "No, that's not really been something that's been on my mind lately. And I'm perfectly content with the way that my life is going." Typically, that will roll them into whatever your job is now, and they won't even think to go into detail on your orientation or anything. Unless you make a big deal of the question at the time, chances are it's not going to become a big deal. Another thought that tends to go through parents' minds either during or after the coming out is, "But I had this dream of watching my child get married, and I've always wanted to be a grandparent. What's going to happen now, knowing that my child is trans or gay or something that in your mind might sound like this is permanently dashed now?" Don't worry about it. Again, this is where it's important to have open lines of communication with your child. Your child being gay or trans or anything other than cis-het does not automatically snuff out all of your dreams of watching them get married and have children. In fact, in some cases, it might even be better because we have to work so hard to prove that we deserve to be able to get married and that we deserve to be able to adopt a child or do some kind of, like surrogacy and everything. We work our butts off on that stuff. We're going to have the craziest party for our wedding. We're going to love all over the child that we adopt. So don't worry about completely losing that, because in most cases it's actually going to be even more exciting than it might have been if your child was cishet. And keep in mind also the fact that your child, no matter what category they fit into, is your child, and no two people are exactly alike. Your child may have never wanted to get married. Even if they were straight, they still wouldn't want to get married, and that's not something that can be forced. I know it's a little disappointing and hard, but some people just don't feel it. And that's what works for them. That's what makes them happy. And you as a parent want your child to be as happy as they can be. So if they don't want to get married, you just have to learn to somehow accept that fact. Same goes with having children. Your child may have never wanted to have children, even if they were straight. And them being LGBT, you can't say, well, what about adoption? What about adoption? What about, surrogacy and everything, if they aren't interested in becoming parents? Maybe their job would make it really difficult for them to take care of a child, or they know that they have financial issues and it doesn't seem fair to bring a child into that, or they don't like the state of the world. People don't just randomly not want children or marriage. They have their own set of reasons for it, and it's not fair to try to change their mind. You can try to help them understand your viewpoints, but don't try to change their mind about it. And again, the big takeaway here is just remember, if your child comes out, it does not necessarily guarantee that you will never see them get married or have children. In fact, as long as you are open-hearted and open-minded with them, and they have always wanted that in the past, chances are it's going to be fine. Try not to ask hurtful things or say hurtful things. There's a lot of examples that I have that I'm going to share with you that either I've heard myself or my friends have heard. So these are all things that have actually been said to people that I know. And in most cases, the people didn't even seem to understand that what they were doing was nasty or offensive. They just said it like it was no big deal. But understand that for a multitude of reasons, saying things like this are very nasty. Please don't do it. How do you know you're gay if you haven't slept with a guy/girl yet? Creepy thing to ask, really uncomfortable to answer. How do you know you're straight if you only slept with the opposite gender? You didn't try to boink same-sex partners. How do you know you're not gay or bi? Can ask you the same question. And it's a weird thing to ask. Being gay does not just boil down to sex. That's not all that it's about. You can know that you're gay even if you're still a virgin, even if you always want to be a virgin, because you are in any way attracted to a same-sex partner only. You can see, if you're a gay woman, you can see a guy and say, okay, he looks nice, but that's as far as it goes. In no way does any part of you feel interested in having a relationship with a guy or anything. So it doesn't all boil down to sex, and when you ask things like that, it kind of implies that that's what you think. You're young though, you might grow out of it. Alright, I can admit there are some people of varying ages who do claim to be bi or genderqueer or whatever is trending on Tumblr at the time, just because they know it will gain them attention. I have a few people on my Tumblr who do that, and it's extremely annoying because they are the reason we get asked things like that. But understand, it is an offensive question, because when you say things like, well, you're young, so you might change your mind, what your child is hearing instead of that question is, but what you are right now is disappointing, and if you magically turn straight, I'll love you more. But last year you said you're gay. How can you be bi now? Sexual orientation is extremely confusing. It's confusing for you as the parent, and it's 100 times more confusing to us, the child who's LGBT. it takes time. It takes a very long time to fully understand where in the spectrum we fit, because once we start realizing that maybe we're only attracted to the same sex, or that we don't really fit snugly into the gender we were born into, or anything like that, we want to make sure people know, and we might come out thinking we're ready, but then, a few years later, that person who thought they were gay might fall in love with a boy. That doesn't mean that they were ever LGBT. It means that maybe they're pan or bi and they didn't realize it because they had yet to fall for a guy. It's gonna change possibly with your child, and you can't assume that they're just changing their mind or making stuff up because it's trendy at the time. Chances are they honestly did think they were gay, or they did think they were bi, or anything else like that. And as time went on and they developed crushes and feelings for different people, they realized that, oops, jumped the gun a little bit too soon. That's not what I am after all. Just be open-minded and be like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad that you understand better who you are now. If you're bi, there's still a chance you could end up with a guy or a girl and having a normal life. That hopefulness when a child is pan or bi is extremely devastating for them, because it makes them feel like the only way you'll be happy is if they are on the straight end of being bi or pan. That, oh, goody goody, because my kid likes boys and girls and, with pan, everything in between, it means there's a chance that they could still end up in a hetero relationship, and then I don't have to worry about them embarrassing me. They know that's what you're thinking when you say that. That hurts like crazy. Please never say things like that to your child, I'm begging you, because it's going to be really hurtful if they do end up in what is perceived as a heterosexual relationship, and you're erasing the fact that they are bi. You're erasing part of their identity. That's a horrible thing to do. You wouldn't want anyone erasing part of who you are, so don't erase part of who they are. And on the opposite end of that spectrum, if they end up in what is perceived as a same-sex partnership, they don't want to feel like they've disappointed you just because they didn't do the straight thing. Are you sure you're trans and not just a drag king or a drag queen? Again, massively offensive. Drag is a wonderful gateway for trans people. It's a great way for a lot of trans people to realize that they're trans, or that they fall under the trans umbrella, which is, anything that's outside being happy in the gender that you were born into. They might start out as a drag king or a drag queen and think that's all they are, but as the years go on and they do it more and more, they might realize this is actually who I am. I'm happier being a man. I'm happier being a woman. And I know that's going to be a lot to take in. Your kid going from drag king or drag queen to parents, I am not happy at all in my gender. I'm happier this way. So, Tiffany is no longer my drag name. That's my name. Please use it. Understand that maybe they did begin in drag, but drag does help people understand who they really are. But there are only two genders. What are genderqueer, gender fluid, agender, blah, 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 blah. You can ask questions about your child's gender if you don't understand what genderqueer, gender fluid, gender all the rest is. But please never say, but there's only two genders, or any variation of that phrase, because trust me, people hear it enough, even within the LGBT community. They don't need to hear it from you too. It might be from your perception what makes sense to only have boy and girl and nothing else, but the most basic and the quickest way for me to explain this to you is sex is parts. Sex is, you got a peen or you got a vag, that makes you this or that. Gender is what your brain perceives you as being. Gender is not organs. Gender is what your brain sees you as. You can a man sexually, but in your brain you might be gender fluid, which means that depending on the day by day, it's gonna fluctuate. One day you might feel completely feminine, and the next day you might feel completely masculine. Please don't challenge your child's gender, and don't say anything regarding there only being two genders, because that's just going to frustrate them and shut them down, and those lines of communications are just killed now. If your child wants to include you in their community, please accept that inclusion. If they want you to go to a pride parade with them, or to a drag show, or to a rally, please be open to going. I know it's a little uncomfortable and you're going to feel like a fish out of water, but that's how they feel every day in your world. And it's a huge deal if your LGBT child wants to include you in their community, because it means that they feel comfortable enough in you from the way that you've behaved around them since they came out, that they think you can continue supporting them. And the last thing I have to say, and in my mind the most important, is after your child comes out and you take a few hours to process what they told you, it's very, very important for you to go to your child. Don't wait for them to come to you. Go to your child, sit down with them, and please, from the bottom of your heart, explain to them that you still love them just the way you always did, and you accept them. You'll never stop loving them, no matter who they are or what they do, and you always want to be a part of their life, because it is terrifying coming out, because there isn't a single LGBT person in this entire world who hasn't seen one of their friends come out to their parent who they were best friends with before and then get kicked out of their house or have something even worse happen. So please, please, after your kid comes out, sit down with them and explain to them that their relationship with you is not going to change just because they came out. I hope this video was informative and helpful. Hopefully, if you're the parent of an LGBT child, now this will make things make a little bit more sense. Maybe even sit down with them to watch this video so that you can ask them questions. As always, I want to conclude this video by saying, do something that makes you happy today, no matter what anyone else thinks about it, and I shall see you all very soon.